When the Oreshnik launched, Putin believed he had played one of Russia's strongest cards. It was billed as an unstoppable hypersonic missile capable of carrying a nuclear warhead. The strike sent a clear warning to Ukraine and its partners that Moscow could escalate far beyond its current operations in Ukraine. That word could, however, no longer applies. It is no longer feasible. Ukraine's Flamingo missile has just struck a critical node in Russia's nuclear capability, rendering Oreshnik inoperable and turning Putin's nuclear bluff into an empty threat. Before continuing, comment number 2 if you support Ukraine, number 3 if you support Russia, and number 4 if you love peace.
On an unspecified date in February, United 24 Media was among the first outlets to report what may rank as one of Ukraine's most significant strikes of the war. A Ukrainian-produced Flamingo missile flew hundreds of miles, crossed into Russian airspace, and targeted the Astrakhan region in southwestern Russia. The area is sensitive for Ukraine because it lies relatively close to the shared border. Astrakhan is also strategically vital because it hosts Kapustin Yar, the test range Russia has used to launch Oreshnik, the same missile that struck Lviv only weeks earlier. Ukraine sought retaliation for that Lviv attack, and the reason will become clear shortly.
The retaliation came in the form of Flamingo missiles that penetrated Russian air defenses over Kapustin Yar and hit the facility from which Moscow had fired a hypersonic weapon at Lviv. It was a major success for Ukraine. The Ukrainian General Staff quickly posted the rationale on Telegram. Quote, "In January 2026, Ukraine's defense forces conducted multiple successful strikes on structures at the Kapustin Yar test range in Russia's Astrakhan region, where preparations were underway for launches of intercontinental and intermediate-range ballistic missiles using long-range Ukrainian-made weapons, specifically the FP-5 Flamingo," unquote, the General Staff stated. They added that evidence confirmed the January strikes succeeded, with several buildings damaged, one severely, and personnel evacuated. Kapustin Yar may not be completely out of commission. It has, however, sustained enough damage to delay any Russian attempt to launch additional Oreshnik missiles against Ukraine. More importantly, Ukraine sent a direct message with this operation. We just hit Oreshnik at its point of origin, and we can do it again.
Additional evidence of Ukraine's achievement came from the Telegram channel Lenova Plus. On the same day the Ukrainian General Staff issued its statement, the channel published a satellite image of Kapustin Yar. It confirmed that Ukraine struck on the night of January 27th to 28th, and that Ukrainian drone missile hybrids, known as Flamingo, appeared to concentrate on what it called Area 105 of the missile test complex. In particular, Ukraine hit several storage and preparation facilities Russia uses before launches. Oreshnik missiles may have been among them. If those facilities were destroyed, Russia must now rebuild them before it can contemplate employing Oreshnik again. And anything Russia rebuilds, Ukraine can destroy again.
Ultimately, Flamingo packs serious capability, and Ukraine is ramping up production. In late September, Militerny reported that Flamingo manufacturer Firepoint had acquired a large batch of surplus aircraft engines to boost output. The engines were no longer suitable for their original purpose. They were, however, perfectly capable of powering a one-way drone missile hybrid on a short flight into Russia. With refurbishment and modification, the engines gave Firepoint a low-cost way to move Flamingo weapons off the assembly line and into Ukrainian hands. At the time of the report, Militerny said Firepoint was producing 2 Flamingo missiles per month. By the end of 2025, the company aimed for a monthly output of 200. Whether Firepoint meets that goal remains unknown, but the effort shows Ukraine is fully committed to the missile it just used to strike Russia's primary Oreshnik base. That is troubling for Putin for several reasons, all of which will be explained later in the video. For now, Putin must worry that Ukraine is building large numbers of a weapon more menacing than any long-range drone it has previously used against Russian targets. You see, Flamingo is not a conventional drone. It is a cruise missile drone hybrid, meaning it can deliver massive damage at extreme range with far greater control than a standard cruise missile offers. The raw specifications of Flamingo explain why. The drone missile hybrid can travel more than 1,860 miles. Few other weapons in Ukraine's inventory can reach that far, meaning Flamingo can strike targets simply beyond the range of everything else. And when it hits those targets, it does so with devastating force. Flamingo is unlike typical long-range drones that carry relatively small warheads, capable of damaging infrastructure but often inadequate against hardened targets like storage bunkers. Instead, Ukraine's new drone missile hybrid delivers a 2,535-pound warhead to whatever target Kyiv designates. That is more than 2,535 pounds of explosive power, packed into a unique drone design capable of speeds up to 590 miles per hour. What we're looking at here are specifications for a cruise missile-like weapon that outperforms what the U.S. Tomahawk provides. And here is the best part for Ukraine, and the part that will make Putin weep. A single Flamingo costs less than 1/5 of a Tomahawk. Flamingo is fast enough to penetrate air defenses, can fly low enough that those defenses often cannot see it coming, and hits hard enough to do what Putin never thought Ukraine could achieve. That was demonstrated clearly at Kapustin Yar in January, when one of Russia's most important facilities was left in disarray after Flamingo arrived. This is retaliation, and that retaliation will taste sweetest to the people of Lviv more than anyone else in Ukraine. On the night leading into January 10, Russia conducted another large-scale air attack on Ukrainian cities and energy infrastructure. Much of what Russia sent struck Kyiv, where Putin's missiles and drones killed 4 people and wounded 22 in the capital. Though tragic, a more alarming threat was directed toward Lviv. According to Al Jazeera, Ukraine reported that an unidentified ballistic missile traveling at approximately 8,000 miles per hour struck critical infrastructure in Lviv. The missile was later identified as Oreshnik, and Russia deliberately sent its hypersonic weapon against a city only about 45 miles from the border Ukraine shares with Poland. We will explain why that matters shortly. Regarding Oreshnik, little is known beyond what Russia and various analysts have suggested about its capabilities. It is clearly hypersonic, as proven in the Lviv strike. Al Jazeera also reported that Oreshnik is believed to be an intermediate-range missile, capable of flying 620 to 990 miles before impact. The missile appears based on the RS-26 Rubezh design Russia began developing in 2008. And some claim its destructive power equals that of a nuclear warhead, even when armed conventionally. And speaking of nuclear warheads, Oreshnik is also believed capable of carrying them. Russia was quick to boast about what it achieved in the January strike. Just 2 days after reports of Oreshnik use in Lviv, the Moscow Times reported that the Russian military claimed their attack had knocked out a Ukrainian aircraft repair plant. On the night of January 9th, the Lviv State Aircraft Repair Plant was put out of operation by the Oreshnik ground mobile missile system, Russia's defense ministry declared. Ukraine did not confirm this, instead stating that Oreshnik hit what they called civilian targets. The message Russia wanted to send, however, was clear: Oreshnik is ready. Except it may no longer be, thanks to what Ukraine's Flamingo drone missiles did in late January. And if Oreshnik has been taken off the table by a strike on its primary launch base, that is a major problem for Russia, even if Kapustin Yar is only temporarily sidelined. Why? The first answer to the question we just posed is that Ukraine's strike on Kapustin Yar matters not only for what it represents, but for what it achieved. Yes, Ukraine has taken a key Russian missile launch base offline, hopefully for an extended period. That means no Oreshnik launches until Russia can bring the facility back online. Yet, as Euromaidan Press pointed out, Ukraine's Flamingo attack represents the first known instance of a non-nuclear state successfully striking infrastructure used to prepare nuclear-capable ballistic missiles on the territory of the state that built those missiles. That is enormous.
As we will explore in more detail shortly, Ukraine has just called Putin's nuclear bluff with this strike. Ukraine has shown Russia that it is not afraid of what Oreshnik is purportedly able to deliver. In essence, Ukraine is daring Russia to respond with the ultimate escalation. Your nuclear infrastructure has just been hit by Flamingo drone missiles, Putin. Will you respond with a nuclear strike, thereby destroying whatever goodwill you have left in the world? Or will you reveal that all your nuclear threats were merely a bluff you used to get what you wanted from Ukraine? Ukraine is betting on the latter, and by making that bet, they have shattered the perception of invulnerability Putin was trying to build around Oreshnik.
After all, it is true that Ukraine would face severe difficulty shooting down Oreshnik missiles in flight. So would any nation. As Army recognition noted in August 2025, no current air defense system can reliably intercept and destroy a hypersonic missile before it reaches its target. Interception is possible. It is not certain, however, and that is a serious problem for Ukraine, because even US Patriot systems struggle against missiles like Oreshnik. That is where the perception of invulnerability came from, and Ukraine has broken that perception by doing what it seems to always do in the war against Russia, thinking outside the box. If Oreshnik cannot be reliably shot down in flight, then the solution to the Oreshnik problem becomes simple. Defeat the missile at the source, and it will never fly.
At present, it is unclear whether Ukraine's strike on Kapustin Yar actually destroyed any Oreshnik missiles. The sources we have discussed, however, indicate that Ukraine damaged Russian missile preparation facilities. Without those facilities, missiles like Oreshnik become expensive paperweights Russia cannot employ. Interestingly, Euromaidan Press also suggested that Ukraine's January strike may have partially shifted the deterrence balance. Missiles like Oreshnik represent a threat Ukraine could not previously pose to Russia. Even removing the nuclear aspect from the equation, Oreshnik is faster and, if Russia is to be believed, hits harder than anything in Ukraine's arsenal. That remains true even accounting for Flamingo. The real key here, though, is that Flamingo was never supposed to exist. Ukraine had nothing like this drone missile before Putin launched his invasion, and it took years to develop such deep strike weapons after Russian forces crossed the border. In short, Ukraine had no deterrent against Russian missiles. Now they have proven they do.
Not because Ukraine has used Flamingo. By October 2025, Militarity reported that Ukraine had employed Flamingo 9 times in roughly a month since the missile entered production. What matters about this latest strike is that Ukraine has proven it can use Flamingo drone missiles to score a direct hit on Russia's most strategic sites. Kapustin Yar is essential for launching Oreshnik. That means it would be equipped with the best air defenses Russia possesses, and Flamingo still penetrated them all to land its blow. Putin will see that and will be deeply concerned about what it means once Ukraine has scaled Flamingo production to the point of building a robust stockpile. Kapustin Yar may be targeted again, but many other Russian sites related to Moscow's nuclear complex lie within Flamingo range. The Center for Non-Proliferation Policy Education has an interactive map showing many of these sites, both active and inactive. What is stopping Ukraine from striking Shaikovka Air Base? The base is relatively close to Ukraine's border with Russia, hosts some of Russia's heavy bombers, and is believed to be a nuclear weapon storage site. Or what about Russia's Chalovsk Air Base? Located in Kaliningrad Oblast, the base serves Russia's Baltic Fleet and could help sustain the Shadow Fleet, keeping Russian oil money flowing. Many such bases lie within range of Flamingo drone missiles and are unlikely to be as well defended as Kapustin Yar, home to one of Russia's most prized missiles.
Putin must surely be asking himself, if Ukraine can strike the Oreshnik launch base, what else can it hit? The answer may be dozens of Russian bases, including many hundreds of miles from the border areas Ukraine typically targets. This is what we mean when we say Ukraine now possesses a deterrent Russia never thought it would have. Any attack launched from a base within Flamingo range now creates an opportunity for retaliation. Ukraine can paralyze Russian operations in ways Putin may not even imagine, assuming they can properly scale Flamingo production and obtain the intelligence needed to ensure their new drone missiles hit the right targets.
Not every base Ukraine strikes in the future will be part of Russia's nuclear complex. The fact that Kapustin Yar was hit, however, is momentous for that very reason. We have mentioned Putin's nuclear bluff several times in this video, and we have explained that Ukraine's strike on Kapustin Yar can be seen as calling that bluff. But this aspect of Ukraine's attack is not really about Ukraine. It is about Europe. When Russia struck Lviv with Oreshnik, it was really telling Europe that the Baltic states and Poland lie within range of its new hypersonic missile. Just 45 more miles, and Oreshnik could have hit Poland. Putin wanted to ensure Europe knew this because he wanted to use Oreshnik to push Ukraine's European allies and partners away. The threat did not work, but it was made. Mainstream outlets such as Britain's Sky News noted what Putin was trying to say with the Oreshnik strike on Lviv. They reported Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha's statement that Oreshnik represented a serious threat to Europe. Sky News added that the timing of the missile launch is particularly significant, given Russia's recent changes to its nuclear deterrence doctrine and the lowering of its nuclear response threshold.
The reason for these threats may be that Russia has turned to nuclear saber-rattling to try to get what it wants from the Ukraine war. In a December article, they noted that Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov held a special session of Russia's Security Council the previous month, which he used to justify Russia's decision to prepare for potential nuclear tests. All these signals were directed at Europe, perhaps more than at Ukraine. Stay out of Russia's business, and the nuclear threats will not escalate to nuclear action. That threat might have stood if Ukraine had not acted, but they did act. Kapustin Yar was hit, and it seems almost certain that many more Flamingo drone missiles will fly toward that base in the future.
Pressure is now on Putin to back up his words with action. Russia keeps issuing nuclear threats. Now, prove them. Respond to a conventional attack with a nuclear strike, and watch your country become a global pariah the world has never seen. Ukraine knows Putin will not go that far. Any progress Russia is trying to make with the United States would collapse. China might well pull away from Russia, costing Putin his most powerful ally. The odds of India staying on board would also be low. Using Oreshnik, as Putin has implied, and sometimes not implied that it could be used, would be the end for Russia. Ukraine knows that, and in late January they proved it to Europe and the rest of the world. In any case, Oreshnik is not Russia's only nuclear-capable weapon. If Putin intended to make good on his threats, he could have done so long ago with any number of other nuclear-capable missiles. The nuclear bluff has been called, and Putin has been exposed as holding no cards. There is an interesting coda to this story. As United 24 media reported, Zelensky has emphasized that Flamingo is getting better. Speaking at a December 2025 press conference, the Ukrainian president said, "There was a recent use. 5 missiles were launched. 1 destroyed the target, and 4 were intercepted by Russian air defense. All of this is becoming stronger in practice, month by month."
In other words, the version of Flamingo that just struck Kapustin Yar is not the best version of this drone missile that will ever exist. If anything, it is among the earliest. Ukraine will keep improving. They will keep testing and refining, working to make Flamingo even better at evading Russian air defenses than it already is. Every time Putin gives Ukraine a reason to use Flamingo, the drone missile gets better. Putin may want to repeat what Russia did in Lviv in early January.
Ukraine has just shown Russia that it has a weapon that can hit hard enough to make Putin see that doing so would be a very bad idea. Ukraine's calling of Russia's nuclear bluff has come not a moment too soon. Europe is fully aware that Putin will not stop with Ukraine and that he is eyeing several NATO member states. German intelligence has revealed that a Russian attack on NATO is imminent, and you can learn all about that in our video. Comment number 2 if you support Ukraine, number 3 if you support Russia, and number 4 if you love peace.